Alright, time for another draftphysics.com video presentation. So, YouTube video, I guess. So, we will do a review of some of the website videos. I'll do a couple of comments now since I'm here, blah blah blah. And, see where it goes, see what happens. Alright, so Mike Tuggle. So, this is probably a sock account, right? So, let's just check. Just for fun, right? Okay, no content, blah, 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 blah. Probably made a week ago, November, this year. So whatever, fakey, phony, okay? Fine, whatever. Blah, 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 Mr. Professor. So the argument isn't whether I'm a professor, it's whether you're a moron, okay? So, you can look at it both ways. You gotta do the relativity thing. Either I'm really, really smart, or, no, I'm not so smart, but you're really, really dumb, okay? And so the argument is sort of like you're really religious is what you are. You're just a religious fanatic, and you're not even a good one. You're not like the professor of religious theory. You're not like a cardinal or the pope or an authority or a preacher. You're just one of the dumb sheeple, okay? One of the people who hasn't even read the Bible. So yeah, you're not impressing me so far. Again, Leibniz was a religious kook, and he really did shove his religion. It was part of his whole theory of why there needed to be a squared velocity, was because it gave God's creation more purpose. That's the whole point of it. This is the guy famous for saying we live in the best of worlds. That the world is perfect. They had shit flowing in the street, and he thought the world was perfect. Okay. Anyway, have you done any videos on gluons? Well, why would I, right? And gravitons. Well, aren't gluons and gravitons just about the same thing? So this is their brilliant concept for which they have zero evidence. You throw a baseball at the wall, and the wall comes towards you. No, I haven't done a video on retarded theories. Maybe I should do that, but it's just so fucking silly. And what percentage of physicists actually believe in gluons and gravitons? What percentage are morons? Well, there you go. So that's probably a deliberate little bit there, but who knows? I think he meant muons, but who the hell knows? More bullshit spewing out of your mouth. So yes, and no arguments out of yours. So you could try to explain how levers work, or you could explain how spaceships work. They navigate in space by throwing kinetic energy out the window. Because by your theory, the bullet has 2,000 joules and the gun only has 2. So obviously bullets move spaceships more than guns do. Newton's third law isn't really true. Those are all your theories that you have no evidence for, that you support with this crap. I bet you never touched a cyclotron or a Linac. Well, I bet you haven't touched one either. But I clearly did do videos on them, especially the Linac. I did at least 4 videos pointing out all kinds of bullshit. How they're detecting charge at first, and then they switch to detecting heat. How the electrons don't seem to go any faster. You shoot them with 100,000 volts, and they go 98% of the speed of light. And then you shoot them with 1,000,000 volts, and they go 98.5% of the speed of light. You don't get much for your, no bang for your buck in terms of velocity increase. Alright. So it's your theory, okay, that somehow you don't need a change in its velocity to increase its energy. Somehow it has magical energy, and it can get it without increasing its mass or without increasing its velocity. That's your world, fuckhead. Don't try to make it sound like I'm doing something illogical or I'm putting facts together badly, when clearly that's what you're doing. That's what you're defending. Alright, I'm just making sensible counter arguments to absolute religious nonsense. And the fact that you people all want to live in a fake, phony, delusional fantasy land, again, that's not my bad. That's the commentary that I've been making for, 20 years. That human beings, wow, they really do suck. They're so dishonest. They're so illogical. They just don't give a fuck about the truth. If they can steal and get away with it, they'll do it. If they can, violate a truth or rape a girl, they'll do it. You're scum. Yeah, you're just scum. Alright, so go find another comment. I'll be back. Alright, so, really aren't too many comments to deal with. And the website's a little broken because if you're using Firefox, because they broke the whole caching function, and so now you're not necessarily seeing the newest version of anything. But I'm trying to fix that, but a little complicated. Anyway, okay then, kinetic energy is a fake concept. Yes. I mean, you really haven't figured out for 10 years, that's what I've been arguing, well, for 2 years on kinetic energy, that all this crap are fake concepts. Bent space is a fake concept. It's not a description of reality. It's a fake combination of words that create a fake thing like a unicorn. It's not a real thing. It's a fake thing. Space isn't bendable. And in 3 dimensions, bent doesn't mean anything. And I can make all these arguments to say it's an inappropriate use of words. There's an anti-divergence. Wasn't that a convergence? Anyway, word games are a waste of time. And that's all they're playing. Surely you must accept that. I don't even understand you. Why don't you just, frankly, Alexander, I think this is, just go away. I mean, your arguments aren't on the subject. I've pointed right at the board and say, draw a lever, explain how spaceships work, do these real things. And you keep doing this fake stuff. Alright, this stuff that doesn't have anything to do with my arguments. Explain to me how there's some other form of energy besides mass moving. That somehow it matters, okay, how fast it moves matters more than how much it weighs, or how much mass it has, in terms of how much weight it creates. I mean, I've already explained how springs work, okay, you have to undo, whatever his name is, Euler, well, one of those guys, the rules of springs. You have to undo all that crap. You have to explain how springs don't really measure momentum, when of course that's exactly what they measure. They measure something's weight. Something's weight is its momentum. I mean, fuck. I dropped something from 4 times higher. It only weighs twice as much. Again, you keep arguing that there should be 4 times the weight. Well, it isn't 4 times the weight. The distance, it doesn't tell you what's really happening because the distance is an illusion. Because the distance was traversed in 2 seconds, not 4 seconds. That kind of thing. Takes 4 seconds to go up the staircase with the weight, but it only takes 2 seconds if you launch it with the proper velocity. You're just not following along. Well, you're pretending like all these arguments haven't been made, and you're just sitting here going off on your little side tracks. I got no use for that. Nobody has any use for it because you're not answering the direct questions. How can you conserve momentum and have something called kinetic energy? It's impossible. You can't have conservation of momentum because we know there's devices that convert big V little m into big M little v, like levers and like cylinders, like a million different, not a million, but lots of different things just convert momentums. And every time they convert the momentum, they'd have to violate conservation of energy to create your kinetic energy. They would be making free energy in half the cases, and they'd be losing half the energy in the other half of the cases, or many times more than half in the case of the gun and the bullet. Can you explain how Newton's third law means anything if the gun's recoil only has 2 joules of energy and the bullet has 2,000 joules of energy? And can you explain what happens to a spaceship if I allow in one case the gun to fly out the side, and in the other case I let the bullet fly out from the spaceship. What happens to the spaceship? Now, you don't deal with any of the arguments. You're just a fucking nuisance. Alright, so enough of you. So we shall go to the videos of the week. Alright, should be back. Try some random other backgrounds and such. And this should work, and there we are. Alright, so did a few videos this week, like every week, like every day. So anyway, I did one on electricity, so I guess we'll pass on that one. Because let's just stick to the one subject until we get it resolved, I think, but whatever. And so I did one called the KE debate. Let's see if that loads up. Appears to have accomplished the task, and we'll jump a little bit ahead and play some of it. You know, yammering. Do you have a list of the subjects? Alright, so I have to make sure that volume isn't too loud. I don't think it's too bad, so frankly, but whatever. So again, all these stupid troll comments, this useless crap. There is one subject right now pretty much dominating, and yes, all the other subjects I have talked about them extensively, in previous videos. So if somebody wishes to argue one of those subjects, they can find the video. I mean, come on. Debatephysics.com. Yeah, it's all listed. It's all just bullshit. The pretending people do. Alright, obviously we have a lever drawn here, so this ought to be good. Bull as a lever. So the argument is a lever proves the theory can't hold. I mean, this idea of squaring the velocity automatically destroys the equality between mass and velocity. I just don't know why this isn't a persuasive argument for anybody who's done any just even minor, thinking about, a lever, a balance, and the fact that it's so sensitive, a little bit of energy in and it'll oscillate, and that what's happening when it's oscillating is it's, storing energy in gravitational differences, and that's all it's doing, and it just moves the energy from one side to the other side. And you can understand that if I put weights on here, I drop weights onto a lever, that what I'm going to get is whatever I put in over here, I'm going to get most of it back out here, and that I can use a lever to take a 10-ton train going 5 miles an hour, and I can make a 5-ton train going 10 miles an hour. Or I could make a 2.5-ton train going 20 miles an hour. I can make the gun recoil and the bullet. I can do it, theoretically. How is that logically a poor argument? Where's the huge flaw in this simple understanding that yes, twice the distance creates a balance in the weight of the objects? Even though they have unequal masses, they weigh the same. And now whatever motion's going to be on over here, any acceleration or deceleration in the heavier object is going to have a commensurate twice as fast acceleration and deceleration for the half mass object. Exactly proportional. It creates what the Newton's cradle can't do. It creates a circumstance where you can convert all the energy from one object into the other object. You can transfer all of its energy. Where's the logical flaw? Crickets. Oscillation or something. So yeah, it works really well. And I could do this, okay? And this works really well. So just pointing out that the lever will move identically, whether I put a 2 mass and a 2 mass, it'll oscillate. I put the 1 mass twice the distance, it'll oscillate exactly the same. The 2 mass will move exactly the same. Every piece of the lever will move exactly the same. Because the instrument of the lever has done what is necessary. It's given the half mass exactly twice the velocity. exactly twice the acceleration and deceleration. If I move the one mass a little one way or I move it a little bit the other way, yeah, then it's going to be uneven again. And then if I try to put the two mass energy in, some of it's going to bounce back. Some of it's going to be rejected because I don't have the mass proportional to the distance. But if I keep the rules and I make the mass proportional, okay, the size of the weight, and I put it in the right location, the lever balances. And once it's in that location, whatever energy I put in on one side, I'll get all the energy out on the other side. It'll be a perfect oscillator. Again, where's the logical flaw in this reasoning? It proves this squared function can't possibly be true because it destroys any notion of conservation of energy. It demonstrates a way of making perpetual and free energy. It's nonsense. Shit. To swing a smaller object going faster into a bigger object. So here I was just pointing out the Newton's cradle argument, okay, and I did lift it up so you could see it, but anyway, the Newton's cradle can't take the unevens. It can't do the, if I take two things that are the same and I bang them into each other, I can convert all of the energy. But if I take uneven masses, okay, I can't convert all the energy. This will bounce, and this big one will have both of them moving off. So the oscillator will be broken. And the lever does the conversion because it doesn't force this to move at the same speed that this moves at. It's allowed to move faster. That's what the lever does. It makes it leave faster. That's what it needs. And this needs to go slower. So when something fast comes in and hits this needs to move slower. And the lever allows for that conversion. So it doesn't have to do this quick acceleration. So the only way you can do the clean transition is sort of just making the argument that you can't have any reflections. The energy has to go in, keep going in one direction, and keep going in that direction. But if the energy has to bounce off of anything inside of the object, that's the reflection. That's when the oscillator breaks down. Again, this isn't even anywhere close to brain surgery. This isn't rocket science. This isn't even quantum mechanics. And I have to argue this for years to people who are supposed to have something called a brain. Oh, fuck. I mean, it's about as elemental to doing something called physics. And then, right, so getting energy wrong, I put a big E here. I mean, this is just huge mistake. Okay, so yes, you're going to have to admit that your science is founded on a big, stupid, rotten pile of holy ghost right in the middle of it. This is a holy ghost. You got right in the middle of your religion, and it just, frankly, how many people does it turn off? I mean, how much damage is it going to do in the long run? Fix it. Get rid of it. It ruins the story. Fuck it. All right, it's nonsensical gingerbread fable storytelling talking fish crap. Let it go. So, it's a terrible history. Right, I haven't even done a history video in a while, but I mean, damn, the history is just disgraceful in terms of any kind of scientific method, any scientific process, any scientific scrutiny. Nothing like, it's not even that you didn't repeat experiments, there weren't any. And you're all fooled by one little trick, one little card Monte pile of crap experiment. You got fooled by a little magician with one stupid little pigeon trick. And that's it. That's all it took. One little fake walking on the water. And that's all you've got. But in 300 years, that's it. You've got dropping round spherical objects into clay. And your argument is it's linear in terms of how the object penetrates the clay, when it can certainly be argued that there's nothing linear about a spherical shape hitting an object. It's really non-linear in its overt shape. It's bent. Clearly not linear. but no, that's too complex an argument for you folks. Real. That's what you have to debate. And yes, but you won't. So this video is called the KE debate. There really isn't any debate. There's no counter argument to a single thing I say in this video. No pointing out how, oh, that was a mistake, Gary. You said, oh, nope, we can't do that. Nope, that doesn't happen. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Talk about the truth. That's all this is. This is a battle with, again, people who are not. They're belligerently evil. They don't give a goddamn about the facts. For 2 years I make these arguments, and for 2 years they haven't bothered to explain how a lever works. Draw me. It's critical to the argument. I mean, it's the purest way you can understand it. Again, the connection to the Newton's cradle, the connection, the whole idea that it's actually this perfect conversion tool. That it takes a giant MV over here, giant M, small v, into a big V, small m. It's conceptually so simple, so easy to understand. Come on. Give up already. Surrender. You've lost. You can't defend mv squared. It doesn't work. It doesn't make any sense. It's a free energy theory. It's a nutter theory. And the only reason why it's not known as a nutter theory is even the nutters aren't stupid enough to think it'll actually work. They don't invest any time. Do any of the nutters invest any time in exploiting kinetic energy theory? No. Because they know it's not going to work. Because the nutters who do experiments probably have already done the lever thing and said, shit, it can't work. It's not possible. I can't make free energy with something as simple as a lever. I have to wind coils and do Tesla wacky stuff, and make myself a headgear and, Google eyes, and the device has to have a lot more functions if it's going to make free energy. A lever can't be a free energy device because we've been playing with them for thousands of years. Somebody would have figured it out by now, that they can lift the whole cow with just one chicken. Why they would want to lift the cow is, I don't know. Alright, so I did another video called Unsucker's Real Physics, the Gravitational Constant. It's just another, his videos suck. Trying to make some sort of fake news out of there being some, something wrong with recognizing that gravity is a constant force, in the sense that you can calculate its spatial dimensions, and it'll always have the same effect if it has the same calculated dimensions. If you put a certain object a certain distance from a certain amount of mass, you'll always get the same effect. And so there's a quality to it. It's like the light coming off the sun. There's a certain number of photons, and that average number of photons is terribly reliable and terribly consistent. Well, the average amount of gravity is terribly reliable and terribly consistent, and it's all, within our reach as a calculable entity, substance, function, reality. And so why would anybody object to the constant? It's as constant as the radiation from the sun. Why not recognize that the sun produces a certain amount of radiation per hour? Seems a rational thing to recognize. Fuck. Alright, so another video I did was negative energy. And so this is sort of dealing with the kinetic energy experiment done by Professor Lewin, which involves, creating free momentum. And so the idea is can you really create free momentum, free weight? Can you do that in an experiment? A little box, you put 100 pounds in, you get 130 pounds out. Isn't that the same thing as creating energy? If it was heat, you can't do it. You can't make free heat. And that's what the weight represents. It's pressure. It creates heat. Therefore, it's thermodynamically impossible for these results to be real. So I've pointed out how the Professor Lewin experiment has obvious defects where you can figure out, you can deduce that it was rigged. It was for demonstration purposes only. It wasn't real physics. It was completely fake crap physics to justify a silly equation that doesn't mean anything, that doesn't have anything to do with reality, which is in defense of another silly concept, which is that somehow kinetic energy is a scalar and momentum is a vector. It goes in one direction. So if I throw a baseball at you, okay, right to you know, right in your face, your argument is that the kinetic energy isn't the baseball hitting you in the face. That somehow the kinetic energy didn't hit you in the face. It went in all kinds of directions. It didn't hit you in the face. I mean, of course it hit you in the face. That's what it's going to do. It's going to do damage to your face. Just like the momentum. They're both vectors. They're both going in the direction. The energy that you're counting, the energy that you're calling its kinetic energy. If you said it had 500 joules of energy, you're saying it because that's what its motion portion of its energy is. Now, yeah, you could argue that nuclearly, okay, it's a bazillion joules of energy if I, radiate the baseball and make it explode as a bomb. That it has more joules in the atoms than is being counted by its motion. But of course, we're always talking about its motion. We're not talking about its atomic energy. I mean, so the whole thing is such a fake. And, the fact that people won't even admit this. Scalar and vector, these are just made up concept words. They have absolutely no foundation in reality. They just decided it's convenient to do this. Okay, because they can now make sense of their silly conceptual world. But it doesn't make any sense because their experiments overtly break conservation of energy. Because you really can't have these two formulas. You can't have these two ideas. If there's kinetic energy, 1/2 mv squared, then there isn't momentum. You can't have it both ways. And certainly not conservation of momentum. It's just silly to talk about conservation of momentum. It can't exist if kinetic energy were real. People are just too silly. And you could keep doing this. You could keep going forward. You could make two things go in these directions, and somehow they negate each other. Like somehow they enter. Alright, so I get to the point where I just say, look, to make the zip gun, the bullet in the middle, two bullets, charge in the middle, let the two bullets fly out. Somehow one bullet is undone the momentum of the other bullet, and there's zero momentum. I mean, this is just, it's sort of just baby talk. It's so, it's so trivially juvenile. Like, who would believe that but a moron? Can get this flatter, maybe. Anyway, so as I've pointed out, so here's the drawing of it anyway. One mass, a spring, into a two mass. Somehow I start with 100 joules of energy, or 100 momentums. I end up with 130 coming out in one direction and 30 going the other way. So I end up with 160 total. And somehow they say because something's going this way, that undoes the energy going that way. I don't think the universe looks at it that way. I don't think Newton, of course, looked at it that way, Descartes or Galileo. So again, this is just completely illogical. For people to actually believe it is possible to do this. Turn 100 pounds of pressure into 130 pounds of pressure because something went the other way. You can't do that. It ain't going to happen in reality. It doesn't happen in reality. I shoot both bullets out. We're going to say that. So that's the zip gun argument I just did. So we'll skip over. You wouldn't feel it if it didn't have to push you back up. That's the simple truth. So this is the gravity argument that yes, gravity is giving you momentum. You are pushing into the ground. That's why you feel the ground pushing you back up. That's the part you're feeling. You don't feel the gravity pushing you down because the gravity pushes all of your parts evenly. But the ground you feel because it pushes you unevenly. It has to push you from the outside, where the gravity is moving you, all the little bits are moving. Gravity is a nuclear force, where the ground has got to apply its pressure to your chemistry. I mean, this is a concept that should have been taught in grammar school. I wish somebody would have explained it that simply, that I'm sitting here right now oscillating in gravity. It's obvious that that's what I'm doing. The gravity is a constant force, keeps pushing me down. I stay in the same place because parts of me right now are going down and the other parts are getting pushed back up. So it ends up being an equilibrium. But there is a real event happening. So even though it seems like calm water, there's actually a ripple in it. And that is your weight. So that's why your mass weighs the same as what we've slated to be your atomic weight, is because we measure things in gravity. So that's why it comes out the same. So that amount of jitter, that amount of momentum is essentially a 1. That's a velocity of 1. Your mass times your velocity in gravity is 1. So it's 1 times your mass, which ends up being your momentum is your weight. And that works out just fine. And then you go 4 times high off the ground. I mean, you go any distance, 1 centimeter off the ground, and it will double your weight. So you lift any object 1 centimeter off the ground, and it will weigh twice as much when it hits the ground. It's instantaneous weight. The pressure with which it lands with, will be twice as much. And then you just go up 4 centimeters, and now you can double it again. But you have to go up 4 centimeters. Because you're going to start acquiring velocity, which means you're not going to be in the force as long. Okay, the higher you go, the less time it takes to travel the distance. Especially the last foot. Just think of it as the last foot, right? The higher I go, the faster I do that last foot. The last foot gets faster and faster. The higher I go, the faster that last foot happens. So you can understand that in that amount of distance, I'm not getting the same amount from gravity anymore because I went through the gravity so fast. I wasn't in it long enough to collect any. The force moving. Okay. So I've tried to make these points that, the horizontal motion is the same as this motion, so you can understand that there's a certain amount of momentum you give an object, and then if I take a scale that you usually weigh yourself on, and you weigh 150 pounds or whatever, I can give you a velocity, that'll make you weigh 150 pounds. And that velocity essentially will be the same velocity you can account for gravity. And then if I want to double that weight, I have to accelerate you at twice the velocity. And if I use a constant force to accelerate you to twice the velocity to gain twice the weight, I have to, if I'm using a constant force, I'm going to need 4 times the distance to do it in. But the same rules apply. But that shouldn't confuse this idea of understanding that you can't undo energy in one direction by having energy in the other direction. I mean, that is a concept, un-energy or anti-energy. It can't make sense to reasonable people. Come on. Not possible. Energy is motion. All motion is motion in a direction. There's no canceling motion. And I really shouldn't have to make these arguments redundantly and over again. Yeah, so part of that's the internet. I've seen some channels, some educational physics channels where you say, gee, they went to a lot of work, they create animations, they do all this stuff, high production values, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it's okay, it's crap physics, but I'm just saying as crap physics videos go, they're pretty good. and they're only getting 500 views. I mean, you know, who gets to be recognized as a presenter of theory and who doesn't is just sort of the luck of draws and such. There's way too much luck involved. That's, I guess, is the frank point, and that's unfortunate. But yes, obviously the audience I'm talking to, I'm guessing it's really, really just not very smart, and that's the problem, because it can't compose a reasonable argument against, and it won't just say, yeah, okay, what you're saying makes sense, I have to concede. I don't have an argument against it, so yeah, that's a pretty big mistake physics made. I mean, they can't do either one of these things. They can't make a real counter argument, and they can't just acknowledge that, yeah, this is a subject that should be talked about because this is unresolved science. They never had this debate, frankly. While Newton was alive, the debate was over. Okay, Leibniz was buried as nobody. Then years later, 20, 30 years later, after Newton and Leibniz's death, they dug this crap up, and had a superficial debate, you know, punctuated by one stupid little clay experiment. And it's just really bad science. Really bad. No lever experiments. That's what you really needed, was a lever experiment. Just gracefully exit. Okay, so that was that. Alright, and yesterday was comments, so, it's on the math subject, and again, it's just, the math is all cheats to create this stupid squared velocity, so they contrive ways to do it, and like I said, they're using overt cheats, like per second, when per second is already saying per second. Of course, if something's happening 60 times a second, it can happen for 60 seconds or 5 seconds or 70 seconds or 500 seconds. It can happen any number of unit of times. So what? I don't need to square anything to acknowledge the fact that something can happen at a rate, and the rate can happen over and over again, and that would be significant to me understanding how much total something happened. But I just count them. I can just count them like tornadoes or something. I could just count how many times it happened, and I don't square anything. So no other place in mathematics, on no other subject do they commit these cheats. And the rest of it just has to do with the work equation, where they said that work equals force times distance, which frankly they named the joule after Joule, and Joule basically demonstrated that distance doesn't have anything to do with it. Okay, it's about heat, it's about all the energy you're making. Okay, and there's not some special portion of the energy that's work. Heat is also work. That's something the force, whatever force you're applying, actually has to do. It has to create the heat. The heat isn't free. It's not a side effect. It's an actual function that takes place in many circumstances. And the force has to make the heat. It's not for free. So if you're going to calculate the force, you have to calculate all of the stuff that's moving, including the stuff that's moving in the form of heat. The momentum that is heat. Okay, well anyway, so that's probably enough and such. I guess we can get rid of that. And we have a how to focus picture in the background. Anyway, yeah, they're just random. I don't know what the hell's in there. Image wise, I'll have to filter those. Or I could just go back to the other more scientific images, but anyway, just thought I'd mix it up a little. Kind of a nothing picture of the moon, but whatever. Tired. So I don't think there's anything else. So I would like to make a Linux video, just because I have learned some stuff playing with it. Just because I had to. But you want to do something positive, and it's like, you know, it's still buggy, and it just bothers me that there's always something broken, and it's just a little bit irritating because it's so close to being good. I mean, it's still good. It's still better than touching anything Microsoft, but you know, it just needs a little, you know, needs a little cleaning. Anyway, it's enough of a video, I believe. So I guess I will get out of here. I think I can do this now. I think I can just fade away. So I'll do that. So anyway, till the next time and such, this has been draftphysics.com. Debate physics also. Video presentation and such.